You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. Welcome to another episode of the show. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Taran Conwell. She is the host of the Undomestic Mom Podcast, where she helps all of us millennial moms take a look into all facets of motherhood and the hurdles it presents to our self-care. Love it. All right, so today, Taran will be walking us through her transition from nanny to stay-at-home mom of 3, how couples therapy has helped her, and how she got her husband to go with her, and also the importance of the content we see every single day when we log into TikTok or Instagram or whatever social media platform you choose. I'm really just, once again, taking a look at that because, it's always so important to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to social media and our mental health. She also shares the story of how her upbringing impacts her motherhood journey today. We have so much to talk about, so little time. Let's go ahead and dive in. Here's Taran. Hey, Taran. So nice to meet you. Thank you for being here with me today.
It is, Christy. Thank you for having me.
We have so much to talk about. I don't even think we're going to have time to get to all of it. So I'm going to
Probably not.
dive right in. Why don't you share first just a little bit about who you are and what you do for moms?
Sure, yeah. So I host the Undomestic Mom Podcast, and I like to help moms, specifically millennial moms, carve out time for themselves um, by doing less and expecting more. And I have 3 kids, 7.5, 5, 2.5. I am married to my high school sweetheart. So we've been together for 20 years. So that kind of plays into a lot of sometimes people are like, what are you talking about? You can't be that old. And I'm like, yeah, we've just been together forever. And then we live in the suburbs of Chicago, and I started um, talking about all things Undomestic Mom about 4.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, wow, high school sweethearts. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I this is like so silly, but in 8th grade, my boyfriend, his parents were high school sweethearts, and that just meant that we were going to be high school sweethearts, and of course we weren't.
Oh,
But
that's so cute.
is there anything unique other than the obvious about being with your high school sweetheart that you think would surprise people to know, or just, I don't know, anything about your experience with that sticks out?
Yeah, I would say probably that, and I'm really open about this, that we are in couples therapy and we have been for over 10 years now.
Wow.
And it's very much because I think, again, we have so many years already logged, but regardless of, how many years in you are, I think every marriage takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
So he and I are definitely both stubborn and both struggle to communicate things. And so we have always just been like open to letting a therapist help us like work through those feelings. And I think that pretty much everyone could benefit, not even if it's like long term, but I think there's just so much insight we both get from
Yeah.
couples therapy. So that I would say is probably like the longevity of a relationship, early on before we were even married. It was like, okay, we have to do some couples therapy and like work some things out.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I'm not in couples therapy with my husband, but excuse me. I have been in my own therapy now for I guess it's like 3 years now. Um, and I would love to do couples therapy.
Yes, I know.
So, with that in mind, how did you get to go together? Like, did you approach him? What did that conversation look like? Were you both into it? Like, take me
Yeah.
back to like when you started.
I think it's funny too because I think so I'm 37. We started 10 years ago. I was 27. We were engaged at the time. I think at that point it was 'cause before we had kids. We used to live in the city, and so our first therapist was in the city. It was We both worked in the city. It was just convenient, and I think at that point, um, it was. eh, I don't think he ever questioned it, honestly. I We had friends who got married before us who were Catholic, and they did pre-canna. So, I was like, "What's pre-canna?" And they were
Hmm.
like, "Oh, it's like, kinda like couples therapy before you get married." So that's kinda what sparked it because, I thought that was so interesting. Like, I'd
Yeah.
never heard of that before. I'm personally not Catholic, so I didn't know that was a thing, and I was like, "Oh, I kinda love that." And they were like, "Oh, yeah, I talk about, like, finances and kids and kind of just getting on the same page." And so yeah, I was like, "Hey, I'd like to do that." And he, from that point of view, was into it. Like I was
Mhm.
just like, I feel like we're engaged, we're planning our wedding, like there's a couple things we could get on board, like on the same page. He always wanted 2 kids. I wanted 4. Neither of us wanted 3, and here we are with 3. So, but I think that was like, just one of those things where coming at it from for on his end, like very logical, almost tactical place. He was
Mm,
like, "Oh yeah, that is a good idea. Okay, cool." And
yeah.
yeah, it was really really helpful.
Yeah. You know what? Just hearing you say that for him coming at it from a logical, more tactical point of view, you know, obviously my husband knows what I do. And even when I started therapy, he was like, you know what? I'll support you 100%. Go do your thing. I don't know that it's for me though. So
Right.
just keep that in mind. And it's funny because I think now, if I said to him, let's go to therapy to talk about our budget and our this, like, I think he
Yes.
actually could see how that might benefit him in a way that
Yes.
isn't just because I think guys, like, have this I think most people have this misconception about therapy that it's just all, like, I don't know, it's girly, you know? I don't
Yes.
know, like,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
feminine,
totally. Oh,
and
totally.
it's just emotions and weak and whatever, and, it's so that's interesting even if the catalyst is, like, playing into the masculinity side of things, then, like, you still
Yes.
get the outcome
Yes.
that you want, right?
Right, right. And I think that's easier too before I think most people go to couples therapy when they're already in a like what I would
It's
call a
too late.
valley
Yeah,
of yeah, or
that's good, yeah,
yes.
valley, that's
I
good,
mean,
yeah.
and so I think it is a lot easier to get your husband on board when you're in a good place. Like again, we were like engaged and getting married, whatever, planning wedding. And so I think that was a lot easier. And what's interesting is that we're currently on our third couples therapist because we did move into the suburbs and then we tried one out we didn't really like. This time around, it was a little bit harder to get him on board. And we had come out of the pandemic, and
Mm,
I was like we're having some communication issues. We had our third in May of 2020. So we had a third during the pandemic,
mhm,
and so much change for
yeah.
us with the pandemic. And so I think um I did meet a little bit of resistance with that, but ultimately because I wanted to do it and we had a good experience before, he was willing to do it for me.
Mhm.
And now I won't lie, like my couples therapist, she favors him a little bit. Like she just she just adores him. And
My
yeah, so
nightmare.
I know I'm like at first I was like, not sure about this, but it's worked out really well. But she is really good at giving like that, like the masculine side, feminine side. It's like, whatever energies are going on. And I feel like, I don't know, she just has a way of talking to him that really gets through to him. And so I think that's a big part of it too, is like trying somebody out who, you respond well to.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And was that your first experience with therapy?
No. So I had gone, and I wasn't in therapy at the time, but I had gone to therapy a couple years prior to that on my own. And then and now I'm in therapy on my own. But yeah, before my first time going to couples therapy, I had been in therapy for roughly a year. Um, I was seeing a student therapist because I didn't have like I couldn't afford it back in, I think I was like 23 at the time.
Mhm.
And when he graduated, we kind of just like phased out, and I was like, I think I'm good for now. And then I didn't go back to therapy until about like 3 years ago, like solo therapy.
Right. Okay. And so you were 23. What was the catalyst for starting then?
The catalyst for starting therapy, I think when I was 23. So I had a pretty tumultuous childhood and upbringing. My mom is, she's in recovery right now, but mine was an alcoholic and also addicted to prescription meds. And
Mm,
so when I was 23, my little sister's 5 years younger than me. And so she was a senior in high school. She actually moved in with me and my now husband. At the time, we were just boyfriend, girlfriend. Um, and I wanted her to go to therapy. And so she started going to therapy, and I would take her in a couple times, not sat in, but kind of like talked with the therapist. And it was specifically for, she actually might have been 17 at the time because it was a child psychologist at the time.
mhm, mhm.
And she had recommended it. She was like, okay, like I can't see you because it was nice. Like in our town, we had this like sliding scale because like I couldn't afford her to go to therapy at the time either. So I remember it was $1. Like we just had to pay like $1 a session.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just like an incredible service that like my area has. And so she's like, well, I can't see you, but there are students that have sliding scales. And so I think I paid maybe like $24 a session or something like that with
Still.
my,
Yeah.
yeah, he was a student. And so, um, she was kind of the one who was like, yeah, I think you should, work some things out. Um, and yeah, I probably should have been in therapy for longer, but then, like I said, he graduated. I was like, yeah, we'll just kind of see what happens.
Okay. Okay. And so your experience as your mother's daughter, then your experience as what sounds like at one point your younger sister's caretaker,
Yes.
guardian, and now you're a mother of three. Where do you see your past show up now in your own mothering?
Ugh, so much. Um, a big thing I would say honestly, like, oh, it's always been the biggest struggle for me is that my mom had 4 kids, single mom, um,
Mm,
constantly in abusive relationships because yeah, she battled addiction, and she had no like my mom never had patience. She had no bandwidth. Like it's just
yeah.
when I look back on it, like of course I love my siblings. I'm glad they're all here, but it's kind of like, well, maybe 4 was probably too many. I think like that you did. Um, and so I would say once my oldest got to be about like 3, 4, maybe when it became like, oh, you're really triggering me in certain ways. Like
Mhm,
my yelling
mm,
came out, and I would be like, you sound just like your mom. Like I would
mm,
be like, I just sound like my mom. And like, I hated that part of me. And um, but I didn't know how to stop it. Like I
yeah.
didn't know how to stop it until with my third, got diagnosed with postpartum anxiety.
Mm,
She was like, I actually was I'm not sure if you're familiar with Erica DeJosa,
yeah.
Happy as a Mother.
Mhm.
So she has a membership. I don't know if she still has it. And I was in her membership, which was just like amazing. And she was actually the one who told me that. She was like, oh, the rage, that's anxiety. That's postpartum anxiety.
Mhm.
I was
'Cause
like,
she is like, she's a,
she's a
brand,
yes,
but she's
yes,
also a therapist. She's
correct.
licensed. Yes, okay.
Yes, yes. And
Mhm.
so, um, no one had ever told me that. I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, wait, what? What do you
Yeah.
mean? I'm just mean. I'm just like I was just like I'm just not a good mom. I'm just mean.
Mm.
I have no patience."
Yeah.
Um, and she was like, "Nope, you have anxiety." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh." So I went, and I was actually in therapy already at the time. I mean, even my therapist had never pulled that part out. And I
Wow.
don't know if the labeling makes a difference to everybody, but it
Mhm.
certainly made a difference to me.
In a good way?
Yes, that the rage, like mom rage is actually anxiety. I don't know. There's just something about it that made me feel like I'm not like mean in like my soul
Mhm.
almost.
Mhm.
It's just I'm triggered, I'm overstimulated, there's so many things contributing to it that it's coming out in like, a mean, rageful way.
Yeah.
So then that started me on a journey to find the right medication because I knew at that point I'm like I've been in therapy, I'm doing that work, I'm doing
Mhm.
that portion of it. But I knew it was like a whole there were more entities
Mhm.
than just that. And so I started like a year journey to find the right medication because I'm very much like I'm gonna like we're gonna make this work. And I finally did. I ended up with the last one I tried was Wellbutrin, and that's the one that has worked the best for me. And I wouldn't be the mom who I am today without it.
Mhm.
So when I look back now at my own mother, um, she's the same thing. She just had anxiety and she was triggered, and she dealt with like she had a rough life. And so if she could have been on medication then, I think she would have her life would have been completely different, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Or gone to therapy, and think mental health as a whole. There's a lot of contributing factors to it, but I think for a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I think that there are definitely I've come across many women who medication is an integral part of
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's just for me. It's like almost I have now the most I think I had empathy for my mom before, but it's like nothing healed my relationship with my own mom like becoming a mother.
Yeah.
And so that part of it was yeah, just and every day that goes on and I learn something new. Even that I get to the point where I like every you know, new thing I deal with, I'm like, oh God, this is how she felt. Like, this is
Mhm.
why she was so, you know what I mean? Like, she used
Mhm.
alcohol because she didn't have a supportive partner. She didn't have the money to get help sometimes. She didn't have, again, medication to like help that brain chemistry.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's a lot of that is just understanding of my mom, healing from my own stuff, and then um, really just going easy on myself in motherhood. Because at the end of the day, heard once like you don't have to fix all of the generational trauma, like you don't have to heal all the generational curses.
Mhm.
Heal a couple, like
Yeah.
you're still going to pass a couple on and then they're going to heal
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think that's kind of how I view it and where I'm at in my motherhood journey with in relation to my own mom.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I'm a fellow medicated mom. So, yes, thank you for
Yes.
talking about it. And it changed my life completely. So I get it. And it's funny because I find I'm certainly included in this group of people, but those of us who go on to help other people, or try to anyway,
Hmm.
it typically stems from a dark moment in our own life, right? Like we take what happened to us and we learn from it, and then we go, oh, other people need to know this. So let me show you the way. And just hearing you talk, though, it almost seems like, and you will correct me if I'm wrong because I just met you 15 minutes ago, but it almost seems like when I picture who I'm talking to the version of me 3, 4 years ago. And it almost seems like maybe you are talking to the younger version of your mom. Like,
Yeah.
you wanna help who you were, but just hearing you talk about your mom and her experience and just not having access to help, like, there wasn't Instagram when
Right.
she was raising you, there wasn't Erica from Happy as a Mother with a community that you could just join for however much money, like, does that sit with you? Like, you're
Yes.
just trying to help who your mom was, decades ago.
Yes, absolutely. Because I do, and that is one of the things I do like to really talk about in my content. I am constantly like, I get that there is like a financial privilege that I have that you might not have. And so like let's still figure it out. Like I said, I'm like a sliding scale therapist,
Yeah,
like well, okay, how can we like look at your budget? Okay, you need to go and like get on a medication. Like, okay, maybe my insurance doesn't cover that. Okay, how can we, now there's like apps and there's like different things
yeah.
you can do. Um or with help. I talk a lot about like hiring mother's helpers, which are younger babysitters. So
Mhm,
that's way more affordable.
mhm,
Um, so I never thought of that. You really hit the nail on the head. I really am talking, I think, to my mom because I do recognize that there are a lot of barriers
Yeah.
that she faced that I don't currently face.
Right. And there are still so many women out there facing the same barriers that she
Yes.
faced, right?
Yes.
Okay, so does do you have a relationship with her now?
I do. So my mom is actually in active recovery and she has been for the past 18 months and that's
Okay,
never happened
that's
until
awesome.
yeah, I
And
turned
she knows what you do, and does she have thoughts
she
on it?
does. She does. Um
You don't have to speak for her. I'm just
yeah,
curious,
no,
like,
I
what
don't
she thinks, you know?
yeah, no, I will say her and I have gone off and on no contact a
Mm,
lot in my life and so um she's been in recovery, like I said, for 18 months. Prior to that, I probably hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. So, and now the contact I do have with her is I still keep it limited,
mhm.
um, just because it's hard to get like burned as many times with,
Yeah.
that relationship. So I get nervous about like putting, too much into it. So
Mhm.
we haven't really ever talked about it at in depth. Um, but I do have a relationship with her now, and I see her every couple of months or so.
Mhm.
And that this it's definitely a I never thought this is where I would be with her. I never thought my mom would get clean. Like I never saw because I think again I've seen so many times like she for a few months or she's gone to rehab. I mean more times than I can count. So it's not that she's never gotten clean, it's just she's never stayed clean.
Yeah.
And so I think that part of it is again like healed me in ways that like I could never really anticipate. The conversations I've been able to have with her now, um, if anyone is familiar with like the 12-step program, like I think it's step 9 is making amends. And like when my mom made amends to me, like that was it was super short and it wasn't this big grandiose thing. I think sometimes in the movies it looks a lot bigger than it really is.
Mhm.
Um, but it really impacted me a lot just by
Yeah.
her taking responsibility for that.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah. So I
You
do have a
got
relationship with her, but it's definitely limited.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Of
I will
course.
take you off that hot seat for now. All right. So you talked about just now going to your own motherhood experience, postpartum anxiety, the mommy rage. Um, were there other areas of motherhood that you found challenging that maybe prompted what you do now?
Yes. I think so my blog, I started off as just a blogger and it started off as like just an all-purpose mommy blog.
Okay.
And that really stemmed from the unfulfillment that I had as a stay-at-home mom because I stayed home with my girls. My middle was I think like 6 months old when I started it. And that really stemmed, like I said, from the unfulfillment. And then when I pivoted almost 2 years ago now into really talking about this, like, I hate to use the term self care because it's so overused and
I know.
it's not,
Yeah.
but taking care of yourself and again, like prioritizing who you are as a person, even though
Mm.
you're a mom. Um, that really stemmed from the pandemic and all of a sudden being in this position where a lot of my coping mechanisms were no longer there.
Yeah.
um, and so, yes, that kind of all fed into where I'm at right now. And as I'm constantly on this like journey of figuring things out, and validate and getting the validation that I like to share it. Like I like to share that with moms because I think there's the best things that ever been told to me about motherhood were someone really sharing how hard it truly was.
Mhm.
And that's always, really made me feel good. And I feel like helped me stay grounded in
Yeah.
motherhood.
Did you think you were gonna like being a stay-at-home mom?
Yes, I
Yeah.
did. I was a nanny before I was a mom.
Oh,
So
wow.
I
You really
yes,
thought you were gonna like it.
I was like, I remember saying this to like the moms I nannied for back in the day. Like I was like, I know the only thing that's gonna be hard for me is not getting 8 hours of straight sleep when they're newborns. But everything else I'm gonna know. Like I would say that to people. Like I was like, oh my gosh. Um, and then reality sets in. And at the time, it was a job and it was one I was helping raise other people's kids.
Mhm.
And I worked for some really amazing families and they were very vocal about their appreciation for me and like the things that I was doing that was like really helping them down to like I remember one of the moms that I worked for being like, "Oh, my kids are so good in stores because like you've taught them how to like act in a store and like not it's crazy to me. Like I can't believe how much you've taught my kids." So like that part, I didn't have anyone telling me that when I
Yeah.
became a stay-at-home mom, aside from my husband, on occasion, and he works, and so
Right.
he said to me once, like kind of how the whole undomestic mom journey started was he was like, "I can't be your only source of accolades. Like this can't be it for you."
Hmm.
And that part of being a stay-at-home mom is what I never considered that
Yeah.
you are there aside from your partner and hopefully they are supportive. You might have family and obviously friends and people we try to say nice things to our family, our friends, our sisters, cousins, but it's not really as much as it I think needs to be
Yeah.
said. And your kids aren't going to say that until they're older.
Right.
Hopefully they say it when they're older, but
Right.
it's a long time away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part of it was really hard for me.
Yeah. And it's funny. I feel like I totally agree, and I totally feel that. I remember early on with my first, just I was talking, I think, to my friend Lauren, and she's like, "How's it going?" And I was like, you know, I went from corporate America where I got a raise and a high five and a, donut breakfast every time I hit a goal. And now, like, no one is saying, "Good job wiping butts today." Like,
Mhm.
no one's
Mhm.
doing that. And I think what's even, and maybe it's just me, but I want it from the people in my inner circle. But I can totally see how, in a way, I don't know what the right words are. I wanna say it means more, but I don't know that that's accurate, from someone that doesn't need to say it.
Mhm.
So the families that you're nannying for, like, now as a mom, you can imagine where they were coming from, right? You can
Yes.
imagine how impactful it was to have someone's it come into your life, and it is their job to teach your kids how to not be lunatics in a Target.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, right? And
Right.
and so yeah, now you're just do it with your own kids because that's what you do, and your kids probably don't respond as well to whatever you did to make those other kids
Oh, yeah, of course not.
be good in Target.
Yes. 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 And
Yeah.
I could sleep every night, not have their entire future on my mind because they weren't actually
Right.
my own children,
Right.
and come the next morning full of vigor and
Right. You
energy.
could turn it off. Yeah.
Exactly. And it just
Yeah.
it brings a different energy to them. And that is part of the reason I'm always telling even people like, I don't really need a babysitter. I'm like, it's having another positive influence, even my high school babysitter, having another positive influence in my kid's life, somebody to give them that energy, give them that positive reinforcement, um, attention span, all those things. I was like, it's maybe because I was a nanny, I just understand how the role of that, how important it really was.
Mhm.
But it's yeah, it's almost it's almost crazy to think now like how people can do without that because it
Yeah.
is so valuable to have another person, on your side. I think parenthood is a little bit too much for two people. like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, say it louder
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's like those TikToks where people are like, "Oh, it takes a village," and then they're like show an empty room and they're like, "Where's the village?"
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah, I'm wondering, you mentioned earlier that part of why you encourage a nanny, or more specifically a mother's helper is the affordability. Are there other reasons why why you encourage this as opposed to other avenues of childcare?
Such as like daycare, do you mean?
Yeah,
Like,
like
okay, yeah. I think for me, yeah, um when I'm talking to people about getting child, it's like hard because I wish there was like a different word. I am usually not, if you're a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, I'm not usually talking about the let's for ease, the 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. You know what I mean? I am, even if you work and your kids are in daycare and you're going, out of the house Monday through Friday, I still think that you can
Mm.
benefit from a little bit of outside childcare. So that's why I kind of talk more about someone coming into your home, because I don't, at least nothing around here aside from the gym. There's no like drop off
Yeah.
child like daycare, but I have used gym daycare, and I've talked, that sometimes that's the most affordable option. So I have, that can be really helpful for mom. Granted, you have to be at
In
the
the
gym.
building. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't necessarily be at your house, or like you just, sometimes I just want to watch a movie on Netflix without, like, I just need to not be touched and just like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that's why I kind of talk about that, because I'm really talking to moms about the village beyond just when they're at work.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a really hard thing for my moms who work outside of the home to contend with, is they are just so racked with mom guilt. They only want to use a babysitter at night when their kids are asleep. And I think that they deserve more than that if they also have a partner who is got a pretty busy schedule, and
Right.
just a supplement a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's really good point. Because I think about that a lot. I no longer go to the Monday through Friday 9 to 5. And I think about those moms that do, because I see them at pickup and drop off, and, you know, to go to work all day, then pick up your kids. It's like, when do they do anything for themselves? Like, I don't know. I have a
Yeah.
hard time finding the time and making the time, really, and I'm home every day. Um, and
Hmm.
so I can't imagine, and that is part of why I left corporate, because the thought of juggling that was just beyond comprehension for me. And I misunderstood
Yeah.
what it would be like to stay home and work with kids. I thought that would be easy and fun. And it's not. It
Hmm.
sucks. Um,
Right.
it all sucks,
Right.
honestly. If I'm being honest, it all sucks. If you work 9 to 5 and your kids are at daycare, you miss them and you feel like someone else is raising your kid. And then when you're home and you're trying to work and be home with your kid, it feels horrible because you can't give 100% to either one. So you just feel like this 50-50
Yes.
person all the time. And I don't know. I think there is this like very unicorn group of moms who are full-time stay-at-home moms and absolutely love it. I don't relate to them at
Yes.
all, but I
Yeah.
see them online, and so I know they exist. I know there are people who like have total fulfillment in that role, and I am envious, but it's not me. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I think I've come across a few moms. I had like almost a scale in my head of like, how fulfilled they were as a stay-at-home mom. I will say, even the ones who are like the most fulfilled, they need something beyond it. Like they need something beyond motherhood,
It's good
because
to hear.
I think, and I talked a lot about this when I was fully stay at home. I You do not get, uh as a society of motherhood, it is frowned upon to be bragging about your motherhood accomplishments.
Mm,
So when you need something to make you feel proud, like, oh, I just, if you potty trained your 2-year-old and you like felt like you did like this great job at it, and you read all the books and you did the research, and they had a great time, and it's done now, and it's like, yes, I've met this goal. And you can't tell other people like, oh my God, you guys are just potty training my 2-year-old. I did it in this really cool way. I made this awesome People will tear you to, how dare you shame mothers who are not doing that. And like,
yeah.
so unfortunately,
Mm,
really almost needs something that is photography, scrapbooking, playing the ukulele, tarot reading,
right.
uh cycling, running,
Yeah.
being a runner, to be like, look at this accomplishment I did.
Yeah. That's a really
Because we
good point.
can't,
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah, we just can't take it as a society for any mom. And I am uh again very, I'm very self-aware, and I am very much like, I have been at the end of being so judgmental when I was projecting essentially that I felt like I was a failure. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, who cares about that chore chart or your activities? And and it's
Yeah.
terrible, like
Yeah.
ultimately. um so yes, I think that even if you are the most fulfilled in 2022 as a stay-at-home mom, you still need something to be, again, like some source of pride that's just
Hmm.
not just your children.
Hmm. And that's an excellent point and a great perspective, because before you said it, I was thinking the same, that I've been that mom that is like, I can remember even not too long ago, there was a mom at pickup. We're waiting outside talking about how she had the day off, and with her younger kids, she baked cookies and they went and did the thing and all the, we can't even remember at this point because I started blocking her out the second she put a smile on her face and said she made cookies, because making cookies with my kids sounds like torture. Like, let me
Yes.
just make the cookies. Like, it'll take 45 minutes longer with you trying to quote unquote help me. And I have no interest in that. And I was immediately like, oh my God, like, great, you made cookies. Like, good for, like,
Yep.
I was judging her. And, but you're right. It was me projecting out that, like, the guilt of why that sounded terrible to me.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
It's really,
And
yeah, it's
thinking
an
she's
interesting one.
bragging about it,
Right.
and like, and bragging being such a double-edged, like, why aren't we allowed to be, it's like pride, but but balance it. But if you're a woman, oh, really balance it, because men will be talking about the things they do with their kids. Like, oh, look at
Yeah.
this one thing I did and they're at that. Everybody, yes,
Yeah.
applause.
Yeah.
And um, women should be more proud of more things in their life. But yes, it's just a constant scorecard that we're keeping, that
Yeah.
we don't need to, but we just do. It just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and it ties into, something that comes up almost every show is the aspect of social media, because you see, when we look at these hashtag blessed moms, we look at them and we go, we, meaning me and the people that resonate with my philosophy on things,
Hmm.
it's like, that can't be all there is. It's not all sunshine, roses, and butterflies, and that's all you show. And I think you're full of crap.
Yeah.
And now with this perspective, it's like, I think there are some like mommy bloggers and influencers who can be problematic in that they do claim that everything is great. But
Yes.
most of them don't make the claim. They just only choose to show those parts. And I think there's issues with that, and we could go on for 4 more hours about that. But just in context of this point, it's a lot of them aren't saying there aren't hard stuff. They're just choosing to showcase the baked cookies. Like, I don't know. It's
Yes.
complicated and it's very gray, and it's mostly how you're viewing it is just completely dependent on where you are in your own mind with motherhood.
Yes. Yes. And when it comes to social media, it is interesting because when someone, and I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people do this, but when someone does post something real and raw on their, whether it's a reel or well, it would have to be a reel or a post, because I'm going to talk about the comments, but some sort of piece of content that there's a comment section to. My first, let me leave, what are people saying? Because
Mhm.
I, like, most recently, well, maybe a week ago, I saw a reel about a mom showing her house that was just like completely trashed. And every room, it was like every room had
Right.
too much clutter, had too much, it was just chaotic. And she was just like, I just want people to think it's not always an aesthetic pleasing, everything's perfectly organized, like this is my
Yeah.
real life. Immediately go to the comment section, see, because I need to know. Okay, people, because that's how my house always looks. Like, a couple of rooms are clean, the rest are like, there's a ton of stuff everywhere. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, you need to get a grip, lady. You need to clean your house." And it's
Oh,
just people dragging this woman.
yeah.
And it that's where I think it's more, and I, because again, I think everyone does that. You read the comment section, not and you probably don't know that many people in your own real life who are content creators, right? I have one other person in my life who's a content creator.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of people are non-content creators. They're
Right.
the commenters
Right.
of the world.
Yeah.
So that's also when you've never presented content to the world, you're the only one who, the rest of the world doesn't know what it
Yes.
feels like to get dragged in the comments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's such a big part of it. And it's hard. That's hard to convey. That's hard
Yep.
to convey to people
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not I'm not trying to create an illusion. I don't have thick skin for the comments. Like I
Yeah.
just don't have the skin for the comment section. And
Mm-hmm.
so that part of it too, I think it's very, Twilight Zone, Black Mirror of us just constantly being presented only good things because people want to come for even at the good things people want to make
Yeah.
negative
You can't
comments.
win either way. Yeah. I
Yes.
interviewed and I was like, if I don't know that and if I'll include this part of the video, but like I was just like raising my hands, just like I just relate so much to everything you're saying, and I talk about this a lot. It's like there is a whole mental health aspect of creating content that is really, really hard to understand unless you've put yourself out there in a public
Yes.
way. Whether you have 10 followers or 10 million followers, it doesn't matter. It is just, it's such a weird experience. And I often talk about it from the point of view that I find that people are sometimes shy about letting me know what they think about content. Like people in my real life are
Hmm.
shy to let me know what they think, that they listen to the podcast, that they watch my stuff. And it's always so interesting to me because I know what they're thinking, because before I was a content creator and I was of the same vein of like, they don't care what I
Consuming.
think,
Yeah.
or like, is that weird? Like, I went to middle school with you and now I'm listening to your podcast or whatever. And it's like, now that I'm out there, it's like, why do you think I'm putting this stuff out there? Like, I want you to comment. I want you to tell me. And that's usually the context of which I talk about this from my experience. But yeah, it's like I was starting to say that I interviewed Jessie Jean recently, and she often will post herself in tears, and people are like, I don't understand, if you're really crying, why, how is it your instinct to pick up your phone? It's like, because that's her job. Like, that's how her brain works. When you do this all the time, you start to think differently. You start to
Hmm.
think, what is good content? And it's not phony, it's real. It's as real as it is that it's her job that to post content. Like, it's wild to me that like I don't know, there's two sides of this that is hard to understand if you're on on the other one. I don't know
Yes.
what I'm saying.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in those moments, there is a lot of like how real is social media? There's just so much. And I do think these, I would say even in the past, you know, 18 or so months, or maybe even just the pandemic, there is a lot more trying to tear down that like
Yeah.
really fake distilled. I think maybe even just with TikTok. TikTok is a more raw version
Yes.
of life in general. Um, and I think that part of it is, yeah, people are still untrusting. Like, are you just crying to get the view or whatever? Is it, what do they call
Yeah.
that? Like, clickbait and,
Yeah.
you know, but ultimately, if you are listening right now and you're not a content creator, think about the pieces of content that have ever had the most impact on you. I guarantee you it wasn't somebody's aesthetically pleasing,
Right.
mantle where they showed you how to put up some little branches for Thanksgiving. It was probably the mom who, did the selfie of her crying in the car with the kid, and was like, oh my gosh, I just slammed my kid's finger in the door and I forgot everyone's lunch and like,
Yeah.
like whatever. And people were like, I can't believe you're posting that. But that's what affected people more.
Right.
That's what
Yep.
helped them more.
Yep. Yep.
And that's hard.
Yep. All right. I'm going to switch gears because I don't have much more time with you, and I have like very vital things I need to ask you about. The one thing I just wanted to go back to with, bringing someone into your house, whether it's a mother's helper or a nanny, you know, I struggle with this. Like, I want more help, but I want my kids out of my house. And I think that
Hmm.
comes from the point of view that I work from home and often feel like I'm drowning in housework. So it's like I want them out so that I can do what I need to do in the house. I also think it comes from control and just
Hmm.
like not wanting someone in my business. I have seen, I have witnessed, and I have evidence that there are wonderful mothers, helpers, and nannies out there who become part of your family and are wonderful, beautiful people who take care of your kids and your home and you, and just it's a beautiful thing. I just like don't, that feels so uncomfortable for me. Like just having someone in my space.
Yeah.
What do I do about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's so funny. It's like, you clean before the cleaning lady comes. It's like, that's
Yes,
how I
that's me.
feel.
That's
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah. And same. I don't have a regular cleaning lady, but I do have two women who I've used, over the years, like when I really was, God, we really need to get a deep clean. So yeah, you're clean before the cleaning lady. Same thing. I'm same thing with babysitters. And I um, the two main ones. One is my high school babysitter who was a mother's helper. She started with me in seventh grade. She's just been with us for almost 4 years now. And actually, my other one was also mother's helper, and now she is like a career nanny.
Mm,
And uh, they, I still get that way. They, and my nanny will actually clean like that. Like she's
mm,
my more, um, she gets paid more, and so
yeah.
she will actually like clean. She'll organize. She's amazing, and I still feel that way. It's kind of almost just when you experiment with it, how do you feel? Was it worth it? And like
Mm,
again with the cleaning lady, like way I had some people coming regularly for a while. It was worse. It was too stressful. That was actually more
yeah.
stress for me. I felt like
Mhm.
no, than the intermittent whatever. Because there would be days they would come, and for whatever reason that week would have been like we were all sick, and Sean had a ton of work to do, and like they came and the house was just like trash. I was like, oh God, where
I
like I
feel
didn't.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I think it's really. I always encourage people, please give it a try before you think it's going to be not great. However, it might not be for you. You
Mhm.
might do it and say, yeah, no, it didn't. That didn't work out. I also like moms to try a couple different people because I
Mm,
have had that. Over the summer, I was in the same position. I was like, I'm going to get this house in order. I have all these projects to do, but my kids can't go anywhere. So I'm going to have a mother's helper come and play. It was summer, so I was like, I'm going to have her play with them outside. And I'm going to get all this stuff done in the house because I feel the same way. I want to do things in my own house.
mhm.
And it just was a complete, it didn't work because my toddler is very clingy and like he
Right.
knew
Same.
like he would come to the door. Whereas now when I have someone come, I usually come down to this class. They can't find me here. I'm in my,
Yeah.
for anyone listening, I'm in my office, my closet office. So the only things
Closest.
I could do in here are things on my computer, whatever, it's fine.
Right.
um but yeah, I did. I had dreams of grand, what is that, not dreams of grandeur, whatever that phrase is.
Grandiose something? What?
Yes, like
I don't know.
um where I really thought like I'll get all these things done in my house. That's just not there. Unfortunately, there's just not much in that way. Other than what I will say is, we use our nanny usually 2 Sundays a month, and she comes from 3 to 7 p.m. We like to do day dates. We like to have someone here with our kids when they're awake. Also, I go to bed at 9 p.m., so I can't do like nighttime dates. It's like a really great time for us to connect. However, the other side of that coin is that on those days in the morning, he's like, I'm going to take the kids to the park. I'm going to take the kids to the library. Because he knows he has a break coming.
Mm,
So then that there is kind of almost like a symptom of the babysitter coming is I will get like a chunk of time on the weekend, not every weekend, but definitely like he's more apt to feel like energized to do it like without me coming with.
right.
And
Right.
then I am like, oh, I could be in this house alone because yeah, I just there's nothing better than like being in your house
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad you brought up your husband because you shared with me in sort of the pre-interview questions that you clock out at 6. You do not do
Yes.
bath and bed. How did you make that happen for yourself?
Yes. It's honestly so, like I said, we're in the suburbs of Chicago. My husband works in the city. He takes the train in. So anyone who know, if you live anywhere where he has a 70-minute commute.
Oh,
Everyone's like, you can't just say an hour. No, 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 it's 70 minutes. And so before the pandemic, he usually would not walk in that door until 6:15,
Mhm.
and my kids went to bed at 7:30. So that kind of started it where it was like, of course I'm doing nothing else.
Mm.
I've just been here all day. Um, you
Mm.
can finish out the last hour and a half, with them. And then that kind of just over time, it's one of those things, and I don't ever like to treat men like they're children because they absolutely are not. However, in these sort of situations, the more responsibility you give them, the more responsibility they can handle.
Um,
So, people are like, oh, I mean, when my third was, I want to say 8 weeks, he was 2 months old. He right back in doing all three kids, bath. He's put all three of those kids in the tub at the same time. He's like, oh, it's not big enough anymore. We can't fit all three of them. He figures it out. He gets it done. Like I don't, now I come in, he's like, please go downstairs. You're like messing with the vibe.
Mhm. Mhm.
But for him, it's very much, and I will say, we are a family who doesn't have, we're not in a ton of extracurriculars, very few. So the weekends is really family time. We do spend a lot of time together.
Mm.
Those nights, that's his time for him and his kids. I have enough one-on-one time with them. So I
Right.
think part of that is me telling him this is what I need. And then him also, because he's empowered by it, he is very much like, yeah, this is the time that I get to be with my kids. This is the time
Mhm.
that I get to impart who I am on them because I'm a micromanager. I'm going to be up there, oh, like half the things they do. I'm like, what are you guys? Ugh, this is,
Right.
he was out of town last week and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these things. And it's just, but that's good for them. They need that. They need that time with their dad. They need that time without mom in their way. They need that time away from mean mom, like
Right.
he
Mm.
needs it also. And like on the other side of that is he and I, then once he puts the kids to bed, we could come together for good times because I've now decompressed.
Yeah.
I am now not like, like he comes in, if I'm cooking, when he comes in now, the train schedules have changed. So he now gets home usually at 5:30. So it's, earlier than it used to be. And I'm usually still cooking dinner. And like, if he starts, I'm like, I can't even talk to you. Like I'm so, and
Right.
he knows for the most part, he's like, is there anything I can do to help you? He'll be like, can I clean this part over here? I'm like, nah, you're in my way. Like, but then when we regroup at around 8 p.m., you know,
Yeah.
he can grab my butt and I'm not like, gonna punch him in the face. He gets a nicer he gets his nice wife.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too, is my husband is very analytical, he's very logical. And I think it just early on he really realized like, oh, well, this benefits me. If I can do this, if
Mhm.
I can give her time to go off and like relax for a little bit, it will benefit me greatly in the end. Um, and I do say that I was like, I think oftentimes parents together too much. You
Mm.
both need to break it up, like,
Mhm.
because he's not the morning shift. I'm morning. He never wakes up with them. He's never gets them ready for school. He gets up, goes to like everything he does in the morning has nothing to do with like the house could be on fire. He's like, gotta go, gotta get that train. So it's not like I'm just like, oh, he has to do it every night. We've just divided it that way. I'm mornings, he's night.
Interesting.
But if you aren't, even if you're doing it sometimes or a little bit more solo parenting on both ends, like he
Yeah.
deserves a break too. I'm not like sitting here like he never deserves a break. No, he works so hard. He has the financial stress of our family. Has a stressful job. He needs a break too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I work that out, where it's like at night I'm done,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it just how mentally we've just kind of settled into that, and it just happened early on because I think I
Yeah.
was just. Ugh.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it sounds lovely. It sounds like a wonderful like Candyland place.
Do you
Um
and your husband do bedtime together?
um what we usually do is there are a lot of nights where he unfortunately doesn't get home early enough to
Okay.
see
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And then there are nights where he is home, but what tends to happen is either I have already bathed them by the time he gets home, so it's just sort of the divide and conquering of actually getting them down.
Mhm.
My kids are 2.5 and 4.5, so it's, like, still kinda brutal getting them to bed. It's, like, all of the stalling, all of the excuses. I need more water. I want one more minute, one more story. Like it's like, oh my God, it's and you know what? I'm rolling my eyes and I have this attitude, but it is mostly because at that point in the night, I am so close to that finish line that
Mm-hmm.
my patience for one more minute and one more story and one more time to the freaking potty is done. Like I
Mm-hmm.
am out. My brain has already started to check out. And so that one more push for anything else is like red alert. I'm gonna lose my mind. And so what I'm saying is he usually comes in for the post bath time situation. And it will be interesting to see what happens this year because the winter tends to be a slower season for him. Um, and I mean that to say that there's more times during the winter where he's home before bath even starts. But I've also just I started doing the bath time earlier because I was done.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I just got over it. I'm like, I don't care if they get up earlier. I need the day to be over. So
Mm-hmm.
I start putting them to bed earlier and he'll call me. He'll be like, "What do you mean they're already in bed? It's like 6:30." I'm like, "So I
Yeah.
was done." No, but yeah, and look, he does a lot of great things. I could say the same thing as you. Like he works so hard. You know, he's taking over a small business right now that was in my family for a long it's like it's not easy stuff.
Right.
A lot of mental, emotional, and physical hard work every day. And so then to come home and have these little toddlers like wanting one more minute of time, like it's hard. He has expressed that he wants that moment, if he can, of the separation, of the transition time between
Yeah.
work, 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 and then he walks through the door and it's like, here's a baby. Um,
Does
and
he drive home? Or does he like that take the train?
he drives. He
Yeah,
drives.
that's I will say because my husband takes the train, like
Yeah,
he does use that for his decompression time, which I know
yeah,
you can't do when you're driving.
right.
So again, like
Yeah,
sometimes it's but he will say to himself, like, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna play, on my Switch or whatever he's gonna do on the train, like really like,
yeah,
and it is just a built-in when you're driving, you can't do that.
yeah, yeah.
Because I
And
get that
because
you need to
yeah,
like take a minute. Because
yeah,
I'm
it's
that
like
way when
you
I
got to
walk in the
switch your
house.
brain. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And then like he will if we're already in the bath or we're just out of the bath, like he won't take the minute then. Like he'll jump in. He wants to see them and he
Right.
knows I want the help. And but then as soon as they're down, it's like I sometimes like I'm ready for adult interaction. I'm like, "How are you? How's your day?" And he's like, "No, no. See, now I'm doing the
Okay.
decompression
Yeah.
thing."
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
and then he's playing Clash of Clans or like talking to his
Right.
brother or doing something that is not having a conversation with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get
Yes.
it. It's
Yeah.
just figuring it out. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, but I love that you're done. Like you just clock out. I mean, it's awesome. There was something else I was going to say about that, and I can't remember what it was. Mm.
And I will wait if I could just say one thing.
Yeah,
The
please.
one thing I like when I didn't get to do it this time when my husband went out of town because my nanny actually got COVID. But
Oh,
I will say, so when he goes out of town, I usually have the nanny come and do it, and she does bedtime. Like I won't have her come
I
during the,
am
what
obsessed with you. Yeah.
I'm like, I always tell him, I'm like, where's the per diem for the babysitter? We need to bump up the budget because I need her to come and help me put these kids to bed. I actually did have the high school babysitter who I normally don't have put them to bed. I had her do it 2 nights because I was like, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
It's too much. So if in any sort of position that was a possibility, it's like, even if it's one night a week, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
one
Mm-hmm.
weeknight,
Mm-hmm.
that you can like find for like, you could get a high schooler to do it. A high schooler can figure, especially 2.5 and 4.5, exactly. My kids now are 2.5. They're like, and the girls are fine. They're not like a newborn like that. Obviously, like, I don't think the newborn can do
Yeah.
but if you're especially gonna skip bath that night and she's just gonna put him to bed, um, then you say to yourself, like, this is like how I'm like restoring myself like once a week versus like getting like, a couple candles at Target that you don't really need, like
I
it's
know.
all about
Yeah.
like that trade
Yeah.
of because yeah, it's just I know that a lot of people's schedules are not, or your husband could be deployed, your wife could
Right.
be out of town every other. I mean, there's so many people that I know, they're like, well, my partner is they're never here because of work.
Right.
So I do like to be very like, understanding that it's not always,
Yeah.
and or if your husband or your wife does manual labor, or like there's things like that, that it's just like
Right. Or they
different,
work the
there's
night
different
shift
circumstances.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It for me, it was definitely, I know it wasn't this simple. I've talked about it a lot in therapy and I talked a lot about it on this show. So it wasn't quite a light switch flip that went off. I know there was a lot that went into that flip of the switch, but what it feels like now, it's almost like there is a part of my brain that is more open to saying, I need help and I'm just going to make it happen for myself with or without. Like I'm always asking for the not asking, I'm always saying like, "Hey, like I know you've got XYZ on this day, so I'm going to ask one of the teachers if they can come over after school and take a few hours and help me out." But it's it's almost like for a long time it just didn't even occur to me to ask for outside help
Okay.
for someone other than my husband or my parents who both still work.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm fumbling through it, but what I'm thinking of is like, for something as an example, like for Thanksgiving, we're going to my brother-in-law's house and we have to travel, and it's always just like very tiring because the kids don't sleep as well and there's a lot going on and they're overstimulated and it's a holiday and the whole thing. And I actually had the thought this week, I'm like, huh, we know a lot of people that live in that area. I bet one of them has a babysitter that I could just ask to come like take them out for
Hmm.
an afternoon to give us adult time. And there's a whole thing with that as far as like managing the family's expectations of what a visit will be. That's a whole other thing. But
Yes.
I know that I will enjoy the time more if I have a break. And in turn, everyone will enjoy their time more because I won't be
Yes.
such a lunatic.
Yes. And your energy is everyone's energy. Like that, you
In
impact.
particular, my energy becomes my kids' energy. And
Yes.
when my kids are feeding off of me in that family environment, no one's having fun.
Yeah.
No one is
Yes.
enjoying it. Uh,
Yes.
okay, so last question for you. Undomestic mom. Pretty self-explanatory, but what does that mean to you? And is there anything you want to say about why that is your deal?
Yeah. So Undomestic Mom comes from the Sophia Kinsella book. It's called Undomestic Goddess. That's where I got the
Oh,
undomestic.
see, I wouldn't have
Uh,
known that. Okay.
yeah. So rough overview. She's a lawyer. She gets fired. She ends up. It's like Sophia Kinsella is like a funny. She wrote Shopaholic. So like she's a funny writer. This girl or woman ends up accidentally becoming a maid for this family. So it's like just like envisioning this lawyer who's now a maid.
Hmm.
And she's like, I don't even know where to start. So that's where Anamesic came from, put it with mom, because I don't feel like I embody the traditional mother of like, especially because I was stay at home for so long.
Hmm.
Well, I'm still stay at home, but like, without working outside of that. Um, of like a clean house all the time, a perfect meal. My kids are always, like I'm like, oh, the homework. Oh, where's the backpack? I mean, it's just like it's chaotic. Okay. Um, I got diagnosed last year with ADHD. So probably if I'd known that 4 or 5 years ago, I would have called it ADHD mom. That's already taken. But
Hmm.
so undomestic is that it's that part, it's that mom who's not type A, who's not um Pinterest mom,
Hmm.
who is not to say because I do love to cook. Like there's not to say there's not any domestic part of me, but it's like that's not motherhood. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want my kids to live in squalor. We got to keep it to a certain level. Luckily, my
Right. They're
husband's a lot
getting,
cleaner than me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're getting what they
Uh,
need. Right.
right. But that's not what motherhood is. Motherhood is how you make your kids feel. And
Mm.
so don't waste all the energy on the BS,
Yeah.
if then you're not having any energy for the real stuff. And then beyond that, yes, and then also you don't have to be the person. I do not read to my kids. That's another part of it. Like people are like, what? I was like, I don't like to read. I don't like to read out loud. I love reading. I'm a huge reader. I do not like to read out loud. I don't know. I get out of breath. I don't know. There's something weird about it. I just don't read to my kids. That's my husband's job. That I ask the babysitters to do that. The teacher does it,
Right.
and so does YouTube. Sometimes it's YouTube.
Yeah. Like whatever. Yeah.
Yes. So it's undomestic is just my view that was like I wasn't gonna be this Betty Crocker mom, but I was still gonna be a great mom.
Yeah.
Um, and not to let myself feel bad about it.
Yeah. 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 I love it. I think that I'm thinking of Renee Rena. She
Yes.
always gets
Yes.
comments like, "You don't like to play with your kids? Like, why did you have them then?" And she's like, "There's
Hmm.
a lot of reasons to have kids other than to sit around and play action figures with them." Like, I'm bored by
Yes.
that. I am. I'm bored.
It's boring. Yes.
It makes my brain fry. And yeah, I think too, just getting to that point of having it be okay that just simply having kids and being a mom, like it's not enough.
Hmm.
And it's hard. Like you and I say it now and we say it pretty easily, but when you first become a mom, that feels horrible.
Hmm.
That feels not easy to say.
Right.
And I'm gonna say one more name. I feel like I don't normally say as many other names, but Ariana Bradford. She's an ADHD coach, actually.
Okay. Okay.
Her show's coming out soon. She was talking about how her line was, "Your kids are your world, not your universe." And
Oh, I love
that was
that.
kind of like an interesting spin on that. Like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
still like such a huge, huge, huge part, but you know, not the whole thing.
Yes.
There's other stuff out there.
Yes. And if I could
Um,
add one little soundbite,
yeah.
I always say, I'll die for my children. I will not live for them. And
Mm,
like that's and then that aspect of it's like, yes, they are the most important thing in my life, but I cannot live for them because it's just too that's asking too. I could die for you, sure, but I cannot live for you. That's asking too much.
I love that. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, Taryn, is there any additional or anything else that based on this conversation that is kind of like lingering in your mind that you want to make sure to say today or to leave people with? I think you just said a pretty good one, but if there's anything else that's sort of, just, hey, I wish I had a chance to say this, by all means.
Yeah, no, um I think the biggest thing would just be that you moms, you don't just deserve 5 minutes a day. I think there's too much out there that's like, and if you just take 5 minutes to yourself, and it makes me want to like throw up in my mouth. Like you
Mm,
deserve at a 24 hours, you deserve 7 to 8 for sleeping, and then you still deserve a couple for yourself beyond that.
mhm.
So for moms to just know that if you are only finding throughout the day you're only getting 5 minutes to yourself, that's not enough. And I want you to work on that. I want you to try
Yeah.
and find more time for yourself. You deserve more than that. I don't like society's take 5 minutes for yourself. It's just it's too I don't know when that started, but it's power against it.
Yeah. 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 I dig it. Okay. All right. So I think Taryn, I think we'll have to do this again because I feel like there's a lot there. And I had made a note about self-care because that's a big thing for me and I hate the term too, but there doesn't seem to be any other way to say it.
Right.
And I feel like I didn't quite tap the resource on how we get that done. So perhaps we'll do this again.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, in the meantime though, I do think it is so powerful to hear your story and everything that you shared earlier about your mom and your upbringing and your own motherhood experience. I know for me, and you mentioned it too, that some of the most helpful things is just hearing someone else talk about their own stuff instead of thinking about your own. So
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, so thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you, Taryn, for joining me and sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us. We had so much fun, but we also talked about so many different things, and I'm going to try my best to pull out some really key moments. First of all, I just want to say that what Taryn is doing with her community and her podcast are so important. To have just a goal of helping moms find fulfillment and prioritize our self care is just top-notch quality human being stuff. We all know that it's so much easier said than done, but with the help of something like Taran's podcast and her community and her insight, even just gaining one new tool or one new skill or one new perspective can definitely make all of this a little bit easier for us. And the other part that I want to talk about is, the part of the conversation where we talked about validation. We all deserve it. Whether you're going to a job every day, whether you're making cookies all day, like whatever it is, you're doing it 100%. You're giving it your best. You're doing it for a reason, and you deserve credit. And it definitely made me think. I shared the story of, the mom at Pickup who was talking about like baking cookies with her kids and doing all these crafts. And I was like, God, sounds like, pretty miserable. But, that's what brought her joy that day. And that should be okay. And that's definitely something I'm going to think about and take with me moving forward. The other thing that I just love is hearing about Taran and that she was a nanny before having kids because, I see the teachers at my son's school, at my kid's school, my daughter's school. I see the babysitters.com and they're so into it. And I think, gosh, like, how nice for that person when they become a mom. They're already going to know that they love doing this. And in Taran's case, she thought she would have it all more under control or find a lot more joy out of it. And I think it just really goes to show that no one is prepared fully for all that encompasses motherhood. And as difficult as I know it probably was for Taran at the time, it's very reassuring to hear for me. And, as we usually do on this show, we talked a bit about social media, and I'm curious, like, what is the type of content that hits home for you? I know that I want to see real stuff. Yes, I want to see hair tutorials and DIYs of, redoing your home because that's entertaining. But when I feel really connected to someone, it's usually because they are being vulnerable and they are sharing something either in a very real and raw way or with humor. And, it helps me know I'm not alone. And I don't know, if it's humor, it gives me a laugh. And so what is it for you? What do you connect with on social media? Because this is something I'm really going to be thinking a lot about come the new year. I've gone off and on really pushing forward with social media and then taking breaks from it. And I think part of why I want the break is because just in my own content creation, I don't find that I'm truly connecting with anyone. Maybe a video or something gets more views than others or more likes than others, but what I really want from that space is connection and community. And at least on my platforms, in my view, I'm not sure I'm doing that. So if you're listening to this and you consume my social media content, let me know what you like about it. And if you're listening to this and you don't consume my social media content, could you tell me why? Could you tell me what you want to see? Because I'm not interested. I'm interested. I want to be interesting and valuable for me and for you. So anyway, all right. Love this conversation. Taran is amazing. She also sent me this really cute notebook with my name on it as a thank you. And that was just so nice. I just love that. And anyway, I'm so thankful that you are here listening, and I will catch you next time. All right, bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.